welcome to our January congregational meeting.
Yep.
I have to say that personally,
They can
it's
just
very
see you.
exciting to be involved in the work of the church right now. And council is very excited to share this information with you. So on behalf of council and myself, we're just really glad you're here. We welcome everyone that's joining us here, and we have some folks who are joining us online via Zoom as well. We certainly welcome all members and visitors to this meeting. We do have potentially 3 items that we'll be voting on by voice. And we just ask that River Terrace members are the ones who vote on those. And for those participating via Zoom, it will just be important that you unmute when we do the voice vote so that you can participate in that as well. I also wanted to mention that unfortunately, Melissa Keeley, who is chair of the deacons and also chair of council, isn't able to be here this weekend. And so she's not participating in today's meeting, but we certainly give her thanks for her leadership. So let's open our meeting in prayer. Father, we gather today on the day we set aside to take a pause from our daily activities and focus our thoughts and actions on worshiping you. We are grateful for the time we had in worship this morning. We know that at times we take for granted our ability to gather, to hear your word, and to sing your praises together. But we know too well what a void that leaves in our lives when we're not able to gather as your church. We are your church, and we exist to give honor and glory to you and to help others know you as we do. We strive to use the gifts and talents that you have given us and to use them wisely for that same purpose. We ask, Lord, for your blessing on this meeting as we work to discern your will. We ask for your blessing on this church, and we give thanks for your faithfulness and your guidance. In your name, amen. So to review our agenda this morning, I'm kind of turn so I can see. Oh, thank you. Will you click slides, Matt? Thank you. I didn't realize you were here. So just to go through the agenda, we'll be talking about the minutes of the 2021 congregational meeting. Matt will give us a year-end report. We'll have a presentation of our 2022 proposed budget, and we'll vote by voice on that budget. And then also via mail, we shared the budget overage proposal that we'll also be discussing this morning. Pastor Brent will give us an update on Sunday mornings, and then Tom Hoffman will give us an update from the facility design team. So that is the agenda for this morning. As far as the minutes go, in the interest of time, we're not going to read the minutes from the whole January 21 meeting. If you remember, that was an online meeting. Those minutes were already approved by council. So the full minutes are available at the table in the back. But Rich Just, our clerk, will provide a summary. And after that, I will ask for a motion to receive the minutes for information. So Rich, can you provide a summary of the minutes?
Good morning. All right. Due to our COVID restrictions, the January 20 congregation meeting was presented via pre-recorded video with a question and answer session on January 24th via Zoom. Ballots were distributed to decide on the following items, all 3 of which were approved. These items include approval of the minutes from the January 2020 meeting, approval of the budget for 2021 as presented to the council, and extend a call to Darren Nykamp to serve as minister of the word for the Campus Edge Fellowship. So let me know if there's any questions on those 3.
So at this time, council brings forth a motion to receive those minutes as information. Is there a second? Thank you. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? The minutes are received for information. Thank you. And now Matt Ratman, our treasurer, will provide the 2021 year-end report and then move right into the 2022 proposed budget.
So first of all, I want to say thank you to the congregation. Council would like to say thank you. It is the faithful giving throughout the whole year was amazing. You can see our total receipts for the year was $929,331. You know, at the end of October, we were at 61,703 in terms of the negative cash flow. And the last 2 months of the year, November and December, the congregation, there were $280,000 in terms of giving. That was about 30% of the total giving for the year. Our total disbursements came in at $887,100.
Congregational meetings on a
If
Zoom.
you actually go back and look at the last 4 years, we've been averaging in
I
right
think
around about
that's-
900,000. So our
What's
expenses
his
and costs have been pretty
Jess?
consistent. Again, our net cash flow this year of 42,000.
He took his mask off for a second to take a drink of his coffee and then he put his
So
mask
our
back on.
total receipts, you can see $927,122 in terms of our offerings. Our building
Wonder
fee
what
was
they do in their home, in their
1,541.
house.
Obviously with COVID.
Well, that's
it's
safe.
not as much in terms
You know,
of
you're there with your own family.
rental for the facility.
But if
Our
you're
offerings
old,
were minus 6.5% of the budget.
If it's so bad that you're, all- you know,
6.8% of the
it's
budget.
really that
It's our
bad.
constant cash.
Everybody comes to church is infected.
For our expenditures, salaries, they were 11.4% under budget at $536,968. You know, really a lot of the shortages were due to not working as much as they anticipated. You had our music.
Well, the church ended up with a,
Budget wasn't spent as much there. Administrative assistants, nursery.
they came
attendants,
out okay with the budget because they had a lot of
everything was
less
just a little bit, off
expenses
in terms of
last
expectations.
year.
Yeah.
Even
Also,
though
in terms of
they
what
didn't
we
get
planned
as
for
much
dental and insurance, that was
revenue.
also
They
down.
didn't have as
Those
much
were kind of the
expenses,
big
so,
drivers
you know, they still lucked out.
expenditures. Again, it was 11% down for the year. So our 2021 expenditures, salaries, we were at 500 and, I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong one. I forgot to flip it over, sorry about that. So our year-end summary for the general fund. So we're at 427,613 when we started the year. In February, with the extra surplus that we had for the year, we transferred 177,000.
It's funny, I'm seeing
The budget reserve.
the beginning, it says Lori Harkema left.
The building
Now
design
Lori
committee,
Harkema is
and I
back
think
in.
one of the things that
She's in the room, why does
finance
she need to
committee
be on
felt was
Zoom?
that as we look at different things, it's important for us to just kind of set stuff surplus
Hello?
aside. We did spend about 15,000, I think, in terms of charities.
Oh,
So we did give, but we also did save for decisions that are going to be activated down the road.
yeah, she's right here.
Total income, obviously,
I'll let you
929,000,
talk.
total disbursements,
Hang on.
87,000, and that ends up being 292,207 in the general fund.
Hello. Yeah.
So, what was given to other ministries in 2021, the ministry shared.
Oh, okay, sorry.
241, that was the CRC denomination, what we had pledged for that. Also, the classics Lake Erie, those were the costs, so that was 157. Campus Edge, there was 20,000, and then special offerings was 119,817. So the 2021 giving, again, amazing, and the generosity of River Terrace Church is amazing. So the general fund came in at 927,000, special offerings 119, and then there were some special donations of about 13,000. So it was about 1,059,939 in terms of gifts that were given throughout the year. So again, council really appreciates the generosity that River Terrace has shown this year and always from history. Wanted to give you a little bit of an update on the Enduring Gifts Fund, where it stands. So in 2020, the ending balance was $424,962. At the end of 2021, it was $439,508. So there was a net change of positive 14,546. And to give you an idea in terms of the activity that happened in the Enduring Gifts, as I mentioned earlier, donations, it was $13,000. There's also a transfer in terms of gifts, memorial gifts that were given that weren't designated for anything, so that they moved into the Enduring Gifts Fund. That was $5,715. Market value changed by 61,000. Some of the expenses that came out of the Enduring Gifts, 27,778 for Elevate Studios, as Tom will be talking a little bit more about that today. The equipment up in the front in terms of the sound system, $21,254 was spent to improve that. And I think the sound has been a lot better. And then there was the landscape project, some of it fell back into 2021. So there was about $93 there. And then market value did decrease by 16,174. So that's where the 14,000 came. So we're going to jump into the 2022 budget. So the process for approval of the 2022 church budget, we're going to review the budget, except for the salaries and the benefits. Then the staff and the families will leave, and then we will review the salaries and the staff and the benefits. We'll invite the staff back and their families to return. We'll have an explanation of the motion regarding the change to the budget policy, and then we will have a congregational vote. So one of the things that I just wanted to just talk briefly about 2022 budget as we put the numbers together. It was a challenge for the finance committee. There's a lot of moving pieces, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of unknowns. With the change in the ministry leadership, you know, we have that going on. You have the impact of COVID and, you know, people worshiping online, people worshiping in. It's just things have changed. Also, in terms of the adjustment of our worship, how we're moving to the 9:30, and as Pastor Brent will be talking about later, you know, all these changes that are happening, how does that impact the budget? So a lot of time was taken into effect in terms of thinking about all these changes, assumptions that were made, and so we carefully sat down as a finance committee to put this all together. So for the ministry budget, you can see that it's $2,450 in terms of reduction. Again, when we looked at the budget, one of the goals is giving is down, membership is down. So we really wanted to make certain that we could reduce and have a reduction in terms of our budget. One of the things that we did was we asked the ministry staff to really look at a lot of the expenses that they had. Look at maybe like the last 4 years, kind of take some of the high points and see if there's ways to be able to reduce costs or reduce part of the budget in order to kind of match what the costs were for those 4-year budgets. So that's in terms of the ministry budget, that's a lot what happened here. The staff went through, was able to reduce some of the costs or the budgeted items to match the 4 years. Also, you have the youth in the ministry, the youth in the children's ministry. That has also come down and reduced a little bit. That's really basically because of the number of kids, not a lot, but just a little bit. And then the leadership training, that's probably the big one that you see in there in terms of $15,000. Again, that's a lot of that is there is a lot of activity going on, a lot of moving towards making certain that we address a lot of the issues in terms of hiring, replacing Ken, building design teams, the decisions that need to be made, Sunday morning update and how that handles. So again, the focus is on that and not as much training for this year. For the support service, you can see in here, advertising is probably the big one. Really what that is with advertising is the website. There's a approval for a redesign in terms of the website. So that's the impact there. Everything else, again, is the staff looking at where can we cut costs and what matches up with what our historical spend was. For the support service for the contractual and professional service, really the big thing on this one is the 2,200. That really is the sound and tech support. That was reduced to 2,200. One of the big things that we did there is we really looked at the hours that we thought would be spent there and the cost, and we were able to bring that down from 10,000 down to 7,500. So again, that's where the big cost is. Overall, the support system is just kind of increased by 275, but not by a lot. So at the time when the budget was put together, our official number for members that were over 18 professing members it moved from 350 down to 336. So as I had mentioned, in terms of the CRC denomination and the classes like Erie pledges, that has been impacted by $9,700. So you can see that decrease there. So at this time, we're going to kind of get into the salaries. So if the staff could, and families. Thank you. All right, so with the ministry staff, there's four things really I really want to be able to cover on this. Okay, first of all, you have the big one is the pastor of outreach and discipleship. You know, the strategic task force is meeting. Their goal is to be able to make a recommendation in February in terms of what we do from a hiring standpoint. I still think there's some question as how we're going, you know, what we're going to do, but that is what the goal is. Probably the best case scenario is you're probably looking at June time period. So what we did was reduce the salary of the pastor of worship and pastoral care. Pastor of outreach and discipleship down to by $31,000 to $42,847. Secondly, children's ministry pastor of care, that position has moved from a full-time to a part-time position. Right now, Carla is the interim. She's graciously and kindly is going to do it through May, and then at that point, we'll kind of have to see where we go from there. Cost of living increase is the third one that I wanted to cover. Right now, the national average is 5.9% in terms of cost of living. Everything has gone up. If you look at what we did last year, our COLA was 1.4% when I think a lot of people saw it differently. So Finance Committee and Council really felt that 3% was a good number if you kind of put the 2 years together, and that's why we proposed that 3%. And then the fourth one is the Director of Youth. This really is the reason why it's down is because in 2021, when we made the budget, that was based upon kind of maybe like the highest cost that we were expecting. And so that number is really basically Preston's, what his salary is plus the COLA. Other salary groups, guest ministers, because of the pastor of outreach and discipleship vacancy, we really felt that it was important to have guest ministers come in and make certain that we budget that line item. Musicians for this year, we decided to keep it the same. There's still, you know, we're still evolving from a worship standpoint. We're not 100% certain how that will end up. So at this point, we were underneath our budget for musicians, and so we feel comfortable keeping that number the same. Office staff, basically the biggest change here, that 18,000 is moving from an administrative assistant position of part-time to full-time. With all the changes that are going on, technology moving quickly, it's really important to have somebody here from a full-time position, and that's what council decided. Custodial maintenance, again, that's basically the COLA increase. And the nursery attendants, basically last year we cut that budget in half because of COVID. We did not bring it all the way back up, but we brought it up a little bit because the number of kids and what is needed is not going to be as high, but we are seeing, you know, coming back to some sense of normalcy. So on this slide, basically, you're going to have, it's basically self-employment tax. This is calculated based on the pastor's wages. So that's 2,170. That's really reduced because of the pastor of discipleship and outreach vacancy. Health and life and disability insurance. The last 2 years, we've been right at 57,500. Rates have gone up. very important to note that rates have gone up and the staff is paying more in terms of insurance premiums. So it's important to note that. But those increases are really offset by staffing and coverages. So we basically kind of stayed where we were at, and what we had budgeted in 2021 was a much, much higher number. So again, we feel comfortable with the number that we're going in here. Staff retirement and the pension fund, again, those numbers are really being impacted by the fact that we have the vacancy in Pastor Kent's position. And you'll see the for accounts reimbursement, continuing education, those are also really impacted by the fact that the pastor of outreach and discipleship is vacant. There are some small adjustments in terms of the children's ministry director, not as much for training because it's going to be more of a part-time position, and also same with the music staff, just a little bit in terms of continuous education. Big one here is the new pastor search and the moving expense. You can see that there's 7,000 that's added to that. In 2018, when we hired or when we searched for Pastor Brent, that cost ended up being about $7,000. The moving expenses were actually about $23,000. But again, what we feel at this point is that we want to make certain that when the task force goes together and they provide council with a recommendation of how we're going to go forward, if the person who is the best person that we think can help us, we don't want to handcuff ourselves. And if that person so happens to live in San Diego or somewhere, we want to leave it. But chances are we probably will not spend that amount, but we want to have that ability, the flexibility as we go. So again, the total salaries and benefits, if you look at the net, it's basically a $22,000 reduction. A lot of that is in the fact that the pastor of outreach is not going to be there, and it's really impacting the insurance and so forth. So before we invite the staff in, I guess maybe is there any questions about salaries and benefits only at this time? Yes.
Curiosity, does the denomination go with the expenses or the place them in the 401k and both companies are doing 401k? They supply some of it and then they got.
I know, I don't have the notes in front of me, but I know that what we budget, it goes into, I don't know the details of how that works, but I just know that we have a budget line item in terms of our retirement that goes in. I don't know that answer.
I do.
Do you know? Okay, thank you, David.
The denomination continues to have a defined benefit pension fund. It's the minority of employers that have that, but having had it for so long.
Hey, Matt, repeat it so people online hear. Repeat what he's saying so people online can.
Yes, the denomination continues to have a defined benefit pension fund.
Okay, and Dave said, just for the people online, that yes, they do have the CRC does have a,
Defined benefit.
thank you, defined benefit for pension for retirement. So, any other questions? All right, I think at this time, Joel, is it possible that maybe you could invite the staff back in? So again, just a quick summary of the 2022 budget. You know, the salaries and benefits, what is being proposed is $574,195. For ministries, it comes in at $35,320. The support services, $185,890, and then the transfer to other ministries will be coming in at $167,504. This budget is a 3.4% decrease. And I believe that last year we also decreased it by another, I think it was, and I apologize, but I think it was 3.1%. So again, we've come down quite a bit the last 2 years. So does anybody have any specific questions about the budget, or also do you have any questions about the spending at the 2021 results? This would be a good time to ask any questions.
So at this time, then council would bring forth the motion that we approve the 2022 budget as proposed by the council. Do we have a second? Jane, thank you. All in favor? Say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, the budget passes. The next item is just a request from the council for an amendment to the Blue Book. Thanks. So it's regarding expenditures above the budget. This would allow council to approve spending up to, let me go back and say what's on the slide. I'm going backwards. The council has the authority from the congregation today to exceed the budget by up to $10,000 if there's sufficient funds available. And what the council is proposing is a change to say the council's authority to approve spending up to 3% over the budget without additional congregational approval if there are sufficient funds available. So Matt will take a minute just to explain that request from council a little bit and answer any questions.
Yeah, so the reason for this request is this policy was outdated. It was, I think the last time it was put in was in 2005. And it has never ever really been brushed up against until last year. Last year was the first year that we actually had something that was over the 10,000 where we needed to spend. It actually was in terms of giving, in terms of what we wanted to do with the surplus. So council, when they were reviewing this and looking at it, felt that number one, it was an outdated policy and that it needed to be reviewed. We also felt that with the budget fluctuating, you know, it's gone down the last 2 years. Actually, it's 7.3% between the 2 years is what it is. We felt that in the past it's gone up, it's gone down. We felt that it was very important for that number of overage to not be locked in at 10,000, but also be able to move. And then again, it just gives us flexibility to be able to move. So those were some of the reasons why council felt that it was important to change that part of the Blue Book. Does anybody have any questions or yes?
That's a serious chunk of money.
Mhm.
And isn't that just always a good time for the congregation to be brought up to speed on how things are going? Kind of maybe pause for a second, say, here's what we're looking at doing, how much it's going to cost, and here's our reason for it, and the congregation kind of begin on what's going on. It's a good time to go to the congregation and talk about how we're spending our money. We don't trust people spending money at all, but just it's good time to keep people informed and engaged in what's going on and how our giving is being used.
Yeah, that's a great question, and concern. I guess what council was thinking is at a basically almost $1 million budget, the 3% we thought that was not a huge chunk of it. But again, it goes back to the point of where we felt that it was important to be able to have that flexibility as the budget goes up and down. And when I say flexibility, I'm just saying that as the budget goes up and down, we just feel that it was important to do that at the time. Also, when that policy was put in, 10,000 at the time, the dollar has gone up considerably over the last, what are we talking about, 22, 23 years. So I do think that number does need to come up. But very, very good question. Yes. What is 3%? So 3% is we're really talking about somewhere in the neighborhood of about, I think it's 27,500, somewhere in that neighborhood. Yes.
So I understand the policy like to be able to spend anything, but that doesn't mean it wouldn't be communicated, correct? What you guys have planned for, go back to the previous question. If you do need, if there's a decision made that we that thought about how that would be communicated. And I understand, be like, might not have time to wait for a congregational meeting and for something to be approved. That something needs to be done, but so we're,
Yes, and I think the key word there is communication, because council definitely hears the importance of making certain that decisions, whether it's this or it's any other decision, as we look at all the different things, it's so important to be able to communicate. So I think communication would be a key part of it in terms of, hey, letting the congregation know exactly what we're doing and why we're doing it and the needs for it. So yes. Any additional questions or yes? Well, I think that the example was last year. Again, we've never ran into this since 2005. We've never really ran into it. But last year, when council had the surplus, a lot of that money was moved into the TRF budget reserve. But we also ended up spending over 15,000 where we gave to charities in the local area. There's 3 different charities that we ended up bringing to motion, which ended up getting passed. That was one example of what actually happened, but yeah. Is there another example? Yeah. With renovation, that number won't be there. I mean, I can tell you right now, it's that will not play into it. I think what you're looking at is if we get into a situation where you have a pinch, we need to hire somebody in, or there's a reason to bring something in where we need a little bit more money, more than 10,000. I think that's where we just are saying the flexibility to be able to make that move. But when you're talking about big decisions like that, that is going to have to be done through congregation. Yes.
So just to clarify on the motion, is it 2% over each budget line item, or is it the budget overall?
It is the budget overall. Yes, yeah. So it's not by line item, but it is over. It is. So for instance, this year's budget at 927, I believe, that's where the 27,000 came from, 3,000 over top of that. Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. Thank you.
If there's no other discussion, then council will call the motion forward to edit the church's policy as stated in the blue book to allow spending up to 3% over the budget without additional approval. Is there a second? Thanks, Karen. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. So we can take a minute quick to go through council nominations because it is that time of year again. We are seeking nominations for the office of elder and deacon. There is important and exciting work ahead of us, as you can see, and we need your input on who you think would be good at leading the church in this work and serving in a role like council. So someone who would be a good fit is certainly someone who loves the Lord, is committed to the ministries of River Terrace, and is willing to use their gifts and time to serve on a role in council. So you'll be receiving information in the mail requesting your input, so please give thoughtful consideration to that. Our nominations committee of Rich Jess, Arlen Bassenbrook, Tiffany Kennan, and Brooke Lemon will be working through that process and then working with council to present a slate of candidates at our next congregational meeting. So if you have any questions, reach out to anyone on the committee or to any council member, but please be in prayerful consideration for this process. It's so important. And at this time, Pastor Brent will give an update on Sunday mornings.
Yeah, we thought this would be a good time to take a quick look back and look ahead. We communicated earlier that after a lot of talk and discussion and prayer, we thought it's not tenable to continue 2 services the way we did it before. At this point, we don't have the critical mass to do that. It doesn't feel good in the big room to have the small groups. It's like a restaurant. So, and we also have fewer people available. With the increased tech, it's taken more hands on deck to make the live stream work and all of that happen. And we've had willing servants and a lot of people stepping up. But to do more than we're doing is beyond our reach. Similar with Greenhouse, with one service we can have a good cluster of kids and people to serve them. Doing that twice is beyond our scope right now. So we thought and prayed about what we could do, and the result is that what we're doing, a service where nearly all of us come together at 9:30, and then a smaller gathering focused on MSU students and people who aren't used to a traditional church setting at 11 o'clock. And we think that package has good potential to help us make disciples as we go forward. Just to drill in a little bit on what we're thinking, council and staff with 9:30, there's been a process with this, and we began with the what and the who. The what, we thought about, okay, what are the values as we come together all together? What are the values that are going to drive what we do? So we articulated 7 values that we're focused on putting into practice at 9:30, and I'll come to just one of them in a moment. And by the way, if you have an interest in seeing, hey, what are those? Let me know. I'll shoot you an email and give those to you. And we also thought, well, who's going to drive this? Who's going to lead this? And so we reformulated a worship team, and that includes staff, Lori, Derek, Preston, myself, an elder, Wendy, and members of various age groups from both of the previous services. And those people are Mark Gabriels, Kristen Hintz, Joe Hoffman, Mary Klein, Dave Vanderhagen, Elizabeth Snyder. In line with council conversations, the worship team said, where are we going to start our focus? And we really wanted to focus on the value of engagement by all. We started reading a book that Wendy came up with, a really great book called The Church of All Ages. And so starting out, we're really focused on making our worship intergenerational. And you've heard that word, thrown around and discussed, not thrown around, but we've used it. But the book really gives a sharp definition that was helpful to us. And it's worship in which people of every age are understood to be equally important. Not merely in a room together, but equally engaged, equally serving, and focused. So that's really what we're focusing on, especially to really work at having folks of all ages lead and sing and play instruments. And you've seen some of that. We're just trying to get it going today. Didn't make it happen, but and then songs and other parts that engage a wide variety of people, old and new. That's another value. And we're continuing greenhouse, as I mentioned before. After the 9:30 service, we're continuing to just rebuilding Sunday school for all ages. And then out by 11:30, which we won't quite make today. The other part of the package is an 11 o'clock gathering in the gym. We've purposely not been calling this the 11 o'clock service because that we don't want to have the idea that, oh, this is what we did before, only delayed. And thought the gym setting could fit a smaller group. So here and again, we started with the what and the who. The what is a gathering focused on MSU students and people not accustomed to a traditional church setting, taking advantage of our location and also the growing swath of our society that is not church. The who, folks just have a small cluster of people starting to work on this. Jeff Biddle, Joel Kuiper, Ginny Matheson, Darren Icat, Dave Ruark, and me have the same preacher, both services. One thing we talked about is, well, why now? And the thought is, hey, this is going to take some time to figure out and get ready. The hope is that by fall, we've got something with some legs under it that can be helpful. We might, the start date is soft, could be by Lent that we start to try to make things work beginning of March, but that's not set in concrete. In line with the purpose of that gathering, the focus is going to be on a highly relational environment, kind of clustered seating, interactive opportunities. Music's going to tilt toward contemporary and unplugged. So the 11 o'clock time means that this group won't be able to participate in Sunday school. Have to develop other next steps. And also, nursery care would be available. That can kind of sink in with Sunday school. But any people needed for serving young children or tech or anything like that, if those needs arise, that'll have to happen from within the group, not from outside the group. So taken all together, we think that over time, that's a package on Sunday morning that has potential to help us make disciples. So that's the update to date. I think we want to save time, especially for Tom, so.
In the interest of time, we will just move on to Tom Hoffman, who's going to be talking to us. He's the chair of the facility design team. So just quickly, this team has been in existence actually since fall of 2019. Prior to COVID, there was some interest in exploring how we could update and improve the sanctuary. That was paused when COVID hit in 2020. But then council asked the team to continue for actually several reasons. Because one, we have some maintenance issue with the buildings and grounds that really just need to be addressed. It's been 30+ years since we've updated the sanctuary. But most importantly, we have a vision for the ministry of the church and really think there are some things we could do with our building that would enhance this ministry. So Tom will share the work of the committee, but know that it's still very early in this process. As Matt shared, we do have some reserve funds available. We haven't allocated anything. We're just getting the initial costs and exploring that and determining next steps. But council and committee thought it important that you know what was happening, where it was at, and kind of how exciting it is. So Tom?
Thank you. Yeah, we have, this is going to be an update only, folks. We're still in process and I don't want to keep you here all day. Here's what I'm thinking we could achieve. And wow, that's really small print now that I see it up there. I'm really sorry about that. I thought the bringing in my formatting was going to work great. I just want to quickly review the process and the cost so far. Talk to you a little bit about master planning phases. We're just starting to get preliminary cost estimate. To give you a sense of so far what the facility design team's sense of direction and priorities is, and then the process moving forward. We're not anywhere near to saying, hey, council, this is what we want to do, or hey, congregation, this is something we want to do. I'm gonna skip this. The council, oh no, I'm not actually, because it's got the names of the committee, but the council, in what Sandy said, gave us 8 things to think about. So who's on the committee? I am Mike Vandehar, Crystal Gabriels, Eunice Bossenbrook, Karen Polishchuk, Kathy Prince, Brad Gears, and Tiffany Kennan, who have all been a part of it, and then Shalom and Brent are part of the staff. So in the spring, we engaged this group, Elevate Studios. They were the design team to help us start thinking about things. They started into their due diligence, and by the way, we said we would use the enduring gifts, and we'd spent up to $35,000 was approved. We started the due diligence of understanding the building in the spring and summer. We may have been part of focus groups, did a survey. We were trying to bring what's called a programming report around about priorities at the church. In the fall, there were some preliminary designs that happened from our architecture firm. And the idea behind this whole thing is to break it into pieces. So having kind of a master plan. Sandy mentioned we have maintenance things that are coming up anyway. We have accessibility issues we've been talking about and wondering about. We have just general facelift because it's been so many years since we've done some things. And then we also dreamed a bit about how to enhance ministry, but we wanted to get it into a bunch of different pieces in a master plan and then see what made sense from there. This winter, we had an RFP for a construction manager. We had 3 firms had interest, boiled down to 2, and one EB Construction from the west side of the state is working with us, and their job is to help us get probable costs, some just preliminary probable costs, so that we have some sense of what could even be possible in this master plan. And then we're now trying to prioritize a bit, and we've reported a little bit of our update to council on Thursday, and we're taking this opportunity now to tell you. So you saw that we spent about $28,000 through the year on this architectural firm for everything they did. That was already in there. And then the construction manager is a flat fee of $5,000 to get us all the way to a spot where we would be able to say yes or no if any project was going to happen. It's a little bit of a loss leader for these groups because they then make their money if there is any construction that would happen. Themes. It's a lot of words. I'm just going to give you the 4 bullet points. Flexibility, multi-purpose, to have the gym be able to, or the sanctuary to be able to use differently. Intergenerational spaces, you're hearing that in worship. We heard it when we talked to people. You know, we don't want to walk in the building and the kids are down and the adults are up. We want to be together. A greater sense of welcoming and gathering. We heard things about how the building sometimes doesn't enhance people understanding where things are happening or feeling welcome, and supporting young families, especially with spaces for them. We also heard lots about security, accessibility, use of technology, and then using the outside. So there were 13 things that were phases that were put out as master designs. Some of them are inside the office space. Do we do something different with the library? Converting the shower room over here to an ADA toilet, sanctuary front, sanctuary back. The family, do we convert the east side offices to a family lounge? So it's used currently for that. The gym, is there acoustical changes that might be necessary or finish changes if we were going to use this? Lower level, would we be interested in securing a hallway? A lot of churches do that now with children's ministries having check-ins and check-outs. And we even had the big whopper inside of saying, what would it be like to turn the church? No one builds long, narrow churches anymore where the pews are all straightforward. So there was a big one. I'm going to tell you, we're probably not bringing that one forward because that one's expensive. Outside, revisions to 2 things outside. Main entry, the idea of having an entry vestibule, canopies, so maybe some different kinds of cladding and or other thing outside, and then the parking lots, both the parking lot here and the one on the other side. This was on the maintenance facility anyway, but how can we enhance it? Here's all those places there. So you get, I'm just gonna leave this up for a second because I don't want you to get hung up on it, because I'm gonna try to give you some things that we're focusing on more. But some of the ideas, if you look at the sanctuary, you're gonna see that seating kind of turns in a little bit. That's some idea. The platform changes, and I'll get into some details on that. Is there any way to have changes happen in the back of the church so that there's more flexible kinds of seating there? I already mentioned about using those offices to the east. The really kind of interesting thing, but we're not sure where that could happen, is the offices have a great bunch of real estate in this church. They got all the windows. They got the kinds of things that, wow, is there any way to use it? So there is a design that was created that shoves and condenses offices in that direction and tries to open up and use offices in this direction as open space, as more cafe style gathering spaces and so on. The acoustical thing I mentioned, Jim, if we did do that thing with the offices, would we maybe need to have some smaller group rooms? And that would be maybe what the library would happen to the library. And then down the two other kinds of things to make out this full 13 things is we did come up with the fact that there's masonry issues and window lintel issues around this building, especially this gym area. And then there was a plan created to what would it look like to change the children's hallway to be able to be sort of sign in, sign out security. So those were a lot of those things, and that wish list is big, and that thing would be, no one was thinking that, oh yeah, let's head in, because this is extremely expensive, obviously, to get all this done. So what have we so far in our facility design team talked about as priorities, or maybe even just sense of direction right now? And here I would say, one of the things that's getting a lot of traction with our committee, our design team, is the outside. Here you see that we're creating this design creates a sort of an entry circle here. There would be a kind of something that would come out from the building to be able to do, and a shift in where the handicap parking is. So we take, when you come off of River Terrace Drive, curb and gutter would move you a little bit farther over so that we could have parking up alongside of the building for handicap. Likewise, it reverses the flow around the building this way. If you look at how things are striped now, they're striped to come in this way and go around. It would reverse that, again, with the goal of having more parking and handicap parking up on the sidewalks instead of having to cross a lot of blacktop to get to the church. This was one of those things where this is getting close anyway to need to do something to the parking. How would that maybe look from the front? Here's a rendering that shows things that are bigger on the list, like if we did the interior changes, that it would also look like it. But you're getting a sense of trying to refresh the facade a bit, having that thing that comes out over by the drive, signage that's a little clearer. This one says River Terrace Church on one, it says offices on the other. That would especially be true if we did the full-blown office plan that they were thinking about. Again, just getting into costs now, so not sure. A little bit of a redesigned steeple, cladding where the brick is. There's a lot of different things that now we are asking the construction manager and the architect, bust these into pieces. We want to understand which of these things might make sense to recommend to the council and which wouldn't. But there you get a little sense of a look. We also, because the parking lot's kind of a big deal across the driveway as well. The thought there is we're not really using all those spaces. Could we grab some green space out of some of those when we do the remilling? And we asked, hey, give us a basic on what it might be to have a structure there that could be used for outdoor worship, playground, those kind of things. So this is one of the things that we're also asking for a bid on, or at least some cost ideas. Here's a rendering of inside of the church that I think would be kind of interesting for you to understand that the committee sees refreshing the front of the church as a good thing. You know, one of the things that has kind of bugged many of us over the years is that we have the crosses covered, right? And by the projection. And so you can either go a lot, or you just lose your cross. And the stuff in front of the organ and so on, that's very old, that's starting to deteriorate. So there were some maintenance issues, but there was also some ideas of change. So what this rendering here shows is a slightly larger platform. It brings it out a bit and curves it and softens it. You see that the seating here is now starting that angled. You see the seating here is chairs. That doesn't necessarily mean that that's what we would do, but that's what this rendering shows, because a lot of churches do chairs these days. But we can definitely stay with the pews. But this is getting at those goals we have of lots of flexible use, multiple use of space, and the different kinds of instrumentation, and so that'd be up there. Let me show you the next one to kind of give a feeling of what would change in the front. There is a material that one can buy that could cover what is the organ pipes, let all the sound through, and allow us to project. And so that's the notion behind this idea, is covering that area with that fabric material that would allow the organ to shine through, but also allow us to have some projection onto it. And then instead of the brown paneling underneath, this is a paneling that is an acoustic, a hard acoustical, I think they're pieces of wood. They're in different kinds of depths. This has positive acoustical properties of being a hard surface, but breaking it up, not being flat. I've seen it once or twice in newer auditoriums. So, and then the other design element you see here that has some sense to us is taking down the little half wall in front of the cross and kind of doing, I think that's got an artistic kind of a tiled thing up along the side of the cross with some soffit lighting and other kinds of things to sort of wash the front of it. So again, very preliminary. We're asking, please bust all this stuff out for us so we understand whether it would be worth it, not worth it, and so that we can come to the council with some more decisions. Among the other things that we have talked about, not sure if this is something now or for later, is many churches are starting to have specific areas for children within the sanctuary itself. On the upper left, you see a Brave church who has their children's thing at the front of church. And then you see one in the bottom left, and I'm sorry, it's not projecting very big up there, where it's tucked way in the back. One of the designs that we had asked for removes some of the back pews and creates a little, takes the level space out into, they're calling them playgrounds. I guess, you know, Lord knows what they'll call them next time, playgrounds for children. But those could be for stand-up tables, other kinds of things that we might want to have in the back. One of the interesting things about that is if you bring that leveling out like that, it might also allow us to have additional places to enter. One of the unique things about our sanctuary is you come in and then you do a big old walk and a U. Maybe you're great with that and you loved it. People who observe that go, wow, that's different. Usually there's more entry places and more feeling of connection of the sanctuary to the rest of the church. And so this design helps us, would have us have a few additional entrances. Not sure, and then the other thing would be to reconfigure the spaces that are currently used for nursing moms and and the folks who are doing the audio projection and that kind of stuff. So the other big interesting thing, but probably pretty expensive, is this idea of trying to create more space here for fellowship instead of just having the long hallway and a couple of stand-up tables to enhance it and get it out towards the windows. Here are some pictures that some of us saw of other churches and how they do it. This had a lot of appeal to during the work of the with the focus groups and so on. It has appeal to our committee as well, but it's kind of pricey, it looks like. So we also asked for some alternatives about maybe just busting open where the glass block is and the current area inside the offices, or how about the gathering room and the office that Brent just moved out of? Maybe that could be opened up towards the as well, so that we would have more space in that area. So these are all the different kinds of things that are being discussed. Next steps are we're asking for more detailed kinds of information from the construction manager. That's still a part of their $5,000 dime that they have to get us more breakdown and get us to a spot of whether there's anything to recommend at all. There's sticker shock when you do the whole darn thing. If everything, man, it's $3 million if you would just do everything. So nope, that's not on the menu at all. How about when we start to do some of these things, sanctuary, maybe a little bit of the outside stuff we were going to do anyway. How can we get that down even without any rough stuff? I mean, we're at least that right now is without going back and forth is more like $1 million or so. And we would love to try to be very specific to say to council, hey, look, here's a menu of what you could do. Here's the things we went back and forth with this group. How would you like, how can we help decide whether this is prudent use of money? Heck no, we're not going to do any of this. I mean, those are the decisions that have yet to come. But we're faithfully, as a design team, trying to show some of what could happen with the money and to be very prudent with the money that you've already spent. Sorry, this is crazy long. It's a long day. So I really think you need to hear from us more, and you need to have another opportunity like this when we start to dial in. But it was starting to feel like, okay, some of this is pretty interesting, and just hitting the Tuesday email blast. Be nice to be in front of you and just give you some idea of where we're at. I don't know if you got time for questions. This is such a long meeting already, but happy to hang out and talk too. If that's
probably a good idea. We just really thank everyone for staying as long as you have, for your attention, for your commitment to everything that's happening here at River Terrace. Your council wants to hear from you, so reach out to your council members, share your thoughts. That's always good. Tom will answer questions, but I think we'll close in prayer so those of you who need to leave can leave. So Brent, if you wouldn't mind closing us in prayer. Thank you.
Let's pray. Lord Jesus, you said, I will build my church, and you had more in mind than buildings. In fact, that's not the main thing. You want to build people. And we thank you for ways that you are doing that and ways that you're calling us to do that. And we pray that by your Holy Spirit, you will work through us in everything from ministry configuration to building design and our interactions with each other. We pray that you will work and build your church for the glory of God, the good of people, and encourage us all as we move out from here. In your strong name we pray.